Welcome, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're just going to give a few minutes so everybody can get into the Zoom room here and we can get started. I'm Tamara. I'm at Moogly, and I'm here today with Yarn Inspirations and Michaels to demo this blanket that you can make in just a matter of hours. Now, if you make it bigger or smaller, it'll take more or less time, but I will explain how to figure out how to do that. And I'm going to be showing you how to hand crochet this beautiful Bernat Blanket Big yarn. And after that, I'm going to be demoing complete opposite end of the spectrum, a really fun thread Christmas ornament. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Lillian, who can get us started here.
Thanks, Tamara. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels. Today we have Tamara from Moogly with us, ready for another exciting class. Today, as she said, we'll be crocheting the 3-hour throw and bonus Christmas disc ornaments. My name is Lillian from Yarn Inspirations, and I'll be helping with any questions you might have during today's class. Feel free to ask questions in the chat here, and we'll be sure that Tamara answers them. While we're giving you some time to join the class, feel free to let us know where you're watching from. And just a reminder that today's class is being recorded, and you can find the recording at michaels.com/classes. Over to you.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much. So as she was saying, and as I was saying, we're going to be making this really great blanket. And what we're going to be using is Bernat Blanket Big, which you can get right at Michael's. There we are. And I just want to stop for a moment before we get started in the hand crocheting and show you that this yarn we're using is what lets us do this as hand crochet. You know, normal sized yarns would be really difficult to crochet with your hands, but with this big, thick stuff, it becomes pretty easy. And the great thing about this yarn is that it's a chenille, so it's not going to come apart. You can see this yarn doesn't fall apart or fuzz up on you. So you can get the look of those great big handmade chunky blankets that you've seen, you know, all over the home decor catalogs and all the pretty pictures. You know, everybody's got those big chunky blankets. Most of those are made with yarn that isn't spun and is just going to fall apart. With this yarn, you can get the look and have an actual usable blanket that's going to be safe around your kids, your pets, and basically real life. So that's why we're making this blanket with this yarn today. Now, the instructions I'm going to be sharing are for a 36-inch by 36-inch blanket that takes 4 balls of the yarn. You can see, kind of hold it up here, give you an idea of the size. So this makes a really great baby blanket size. It's a little thick maybe to put on a baby, but it would be a great photo prop. It's also a great lap blanket or decor blanket. So I will tell you how to figure out how to make that bigger and smaller here as we go. But for now, let's get started with the basics. I'm going to pull up my ball of yarn here, and I'm going to have them switch me over here to my hand camera here so you can see what I'm doing up close. So I'll slide this on over here. There we go. Always try and do it a little slowly so we don't get seasick. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull up the tail end of my yarn here today. And with this yarn, I recommend that you find the end that's on the outside of the yarn. I wouldn't go digging in the middle, trying to make it a center pull ball. I would go ahead and just find the tail end that's on the outside of the yarn. Now, go ahead and comment after you've commented where you're tuning in from today. Maybe leave us a line and let us know if you've crocheted before or if this is your first time trying to do anything like this with yarn. That helps me see a little bit where we need to tailor the instructions. For now, though, I am going to go ahead and just take it real slow. We want to start by putting a slip knot in our yarn, just like we do with any other project. Now I want to make sure to leave a nice long tail end here because we're going to want to weave this in and tack it down when we're all done making. So, okay, I'm seeing a lot of first timers pop up. That's good to know. So first thing we need to do is make a slip knot. So I'm going to create just a little loop in my yarn there. And then I can take my tail and kind of see how I kind of flip the loop over so I can grab that tail and pull it up and through like so. So now we've got our slip knot right there. Okay, let's do that again. There's a couple different ways to do it here. I don't usually do it this big. It's one of those things where the more you think about it, it's almost harder to do. So let's do that again. We're going to create a big loop in our yarn. I'm going to pull that tail behind and pull it up and through. So like I say, with this big thick yarn, you need a nice long tail in order to create that knot. But the knot we're creating, the loop with our knot there, we want it to be big enough to fit about 3 of our fingers in, like so. Because we're crocheting with our hands, we're not using a hook, we need to use our fingers to create the size of the loops we want. And your fingers and my fingers are going to be two different sizes. So if you find that you're having a lot of trouble, you could use 4 fingers, you could switch down to 2. It's really whatever you are comfortable with for you. So let's start that one more time. I saw a note asking, since we're still at the beginning here, I'll do that slip knot once more. We've got our tail end here. We need to fold it over to create a loop. Okay. And then if I pull that tail end right behind that loop, sort of looks like a little pretzel right now. And we just pull that up and through. And then we can sort of tighten it down by pulling back and forth on those ends. And then leave a hole big enough for 3 fingers or so to fit in. Okay. So that is our first chain, essentially. And you can see I'm still kind of pulling down, just making that knot down there nice and tight now that I know how big I want my loop to be. So we've got our first chain sort of on our hook here. It's really a first loop, but to make our first chain that we can crochet into, what we're going to do is just bring up our yarn. And this is the yarn that's attached to the skein, not the little cut end that hangs out down here. I'm going to grab the end that's attached to the skein. You can see I'm just using my fingers and my thumb to grab it and pull it right through that loop we just made. And now we've got a new loop that I pull up to the size of my fingers again. Okay, so now this is one finished chain. So we need to make a bunch of those so that we can have a long strip to work into to make single crochets. So let's do that again. Excuse me. We want to grab the yarn. You can see right there, I've got my fingers in my loop. This is the end of the yarn attached to the skein. I just pull it right up here and pull it through. And you don't want this to be tight. You don't want it to be, sloppy and loose. I wouldn't try and work with loops this big. That's why we use our fingers to help size it. But we don't want it to be tight on our fingers. We want it to be comfortable. We want to be able to wiggle a little bit, get that thumb in there to help grab the yarn. It's kind of one of those things. It takes a little bit of practice and just a little bit of getting in there with your hands and seeing what feels good to you. So there's another one. Let me pull up some more of this yarn. That is the one thing with big, thick yarn like this, you have to kind of keep pulling it off the skein because you'll run through it pretty quickly. So then we pull it up again and we pull it through. And right now with our hands, what we're doing is we are chaining like so. So to make the 36-inch by 36-inch blanket, I found that when I chained 17, that was the right width. You may find that with your fingers, you get different size loops. You may need a different number, and that's okay. But now, for now, we've got a long line of chains right here. So let me hold this up here because for demoing purposes, I'm not going to make the full size 36 by 36-inch blanket today. We wouldn't have time to do that within the hour, but I want to give you a little demo of a few of the stitches. So here we've made our chains. This is how we begin most crochet projects, although we usually do it with a hook. So I want us to take a moment to look at these chains. If I turn them this way, you can see they sort of look like little V's nesting inside each other. And each one of those V's, so like this would be the sides of one V, this is the side of another V. Each of those is one chain. On the back of those, right here, when I flip it over, there is this back hump, sort of like, I almost think of it as like little Nessie lumps. You think about Nessie sort of humping up through the water in that iconic picture. We've got these humps running right up the back, and each one of those belongs to a chain. So for this blanket, what I want to do, because it's a little bit easier with our hands, is I'm going to be crocheting into those back humps. So I've got the last loop I made right here on my fingers, and I'm going to skip the first back hump, the one that's closest to this loop that my fingers are in. This is going to act as what we call the turning chain that gives us the height for our next row, sort of like a little ladder that holds us up to the right height. So we skip right over that one, and we're going to come to the next one. So what we want to do is go ahead and grab that with your other hand, get centered again there. Then we're going to insert our fingers still in that first loop right into that back hump. Then we need to grab our yarn, which is sitting in my lap. So I need to pull it back up here. And from the back, so from the side furthest away from us, we want to grab that yarn with your fingers and pull it just through that loop of the chain, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it back out so we can do that again. Let me straighten things out a little bit here. And it's okay to always, take your time and straighten it out. There we are. So we've got the loop on our fingers that we've made. It's gotten a little big, so I can just pull down on my yarn to make that the right size. Then we skip that hump that's closest to the loop on our fingers, come to the next one, go under that loop away from you. So I'm sitting right here, this is away from me. So away from me, pull the yarn that's attached to our skein up from back there, grab it with your fingers, however is comfortable for you, and just pull it up through that loop. Then we want to take the time to get that loop to be the same size as the other loop that's on our hand, right there. So just take your time, tug them around, give a little tug back on that yarn if you need to, if it got big. Make sure you've got some wiggle room. And then we're going to grab that yarn one more time and pull it through both of those loops. Just pull it right on up through both of those loops until it's big enough to get 3 fingers in there again. And with that, let me straighten out my yarn a little bit here. It's a big ball of yarn to handle. There we go. With that, we have made 1 single crochet. So that is the first single crochet for that row. So to make the next one, we come back to our chain, straighten it out again, get the hairs that you've attached to it out of the way. I know it's not just me. We always get hair on yarn. And we look for that next, sort of that messy lump back there, that next loop hanging out back in the middle of that stitch. Then, and see, sometimes they tighten up a little bit, and that's okay. That's because the other stitches are pulling on it a little bit, so you can give it a little wiggle. Get your fingers in there. If you can only fit 2, that's fine. Get the yarn, grab it, pull it through that loop. Make sure you pull this one up big again. And I need to pull some more off my ball here. Pull that loop up nice and high. There we are. And then we can grab that yarn again and just pull it right on through both of those loops. And we've made our second single crochet. And they look a little messy here at the beginning. As you keep going, they get a little neater. But let's do that again together. I'm going to adjust this loop to the size of my fingers. I want to lay out my chain again so I can follow along and find that next loop right there. Go right in there with however many fingers want to fit. Grab your yarn, pull it through just that loop. Get the 2 loops on your hand to be about the same size. And then you can grab your yarn again and pull it through both of those. And now we've made 3 single crochets right there. So you can see they're starting to come together. Now, I'm going to add an additional tip for those of you who are new to crochet. When you make your stitch and you pull up that loop, you want the part that moves, and I'm going to show you what that means in a moment, but you want the part that moves to be in front, facing you, on the front side of the loop, not the back side of the loop. So to tell which side that is, pull up in your loop a little bit and then pull back down on it. And you can see, hopefully, it's a little fuzzy yarn, so it's a little harder for it to slide. But if you can see how it's pulling down here into the stitch in front of my fingers, that means that loop is facing the right way around. So ideally, you don't want it this way. So where if you pull, it's pulling in the back of your fingers. You want it to pull down in the front of your fingers or your hook. If you wanted to try crocheting with a hook after this, same thing. Ideally, you want the loop to face the right way around. Now, if you feel like you've made some stitches with it the wrong way around, but they look fine, don't worry about it. This is just one of those things that is sort of one of those fussy tips that will help you more down the road. It's just the correct way to do it for crocheting with a hook. So I think it's a good habit to get into. And it can prevent any twisting in your stitches as well. So we've got our 2 loops up here again. We just grab that yarn and pull it right on through. Basically, the more consistent you can be in the sizes of your loops and in the directions they face, and all those little details that do come with practice, then the better your finished project will look. But like I say, it's all kind of little tips that you can add on top of each other as you go. You don't have to worry about it right away at first. Now, as we come down to the end, it can be a little harder to find those loops. We just want to sort of give it a little tug if we need to, give it a little wiggle. Say, okay, that's where we worked into last time. There's our next hump. We've only got a few more left on our little demo here. So I'll grab my yarn and pull that one up and through like so until that's about the same size. And then we can grab it and pull it through there. So as we approach the end of this first row here, Lillian, can you tell me, are there any questions that I can address so far that I haven't seen pop up?
I was just wondering if you could recap about moving the loop in the front. A lot of
Sure.
people haven't heard that before.
Ah, okay. So we want to go ahead and I'll start this next stitch here. And normally when we're working with a crochet hook, part of this is you would yarn over this way, but since we're just grabbing it with our fingers, we don't have to worry about yarning over. I guess that would be the way to conjugate that. But here we'll do it right now. We're pulling up this first loop right here, and we're going to put it on our hands. But when I pull it up big, I'm going to pull it up great big here so I don't accidentally pull it out. But when I pull on the tail end here, the end that's attached to the yarn, you can see which end is closest to the yarn, I guess. That end right there. You can see this is the side, and this is the side closer to the rest of our project, if you will. So the side that moves, the side that's attached to our yarn, is the side we want in front of our hook or our fingers. And like I say, this just helps the yarn lay a little better. It makes the stitches look a little nicer. And it's just part of staying really consistent. I will try and slow it down just a little bit more, but I do want to point out that this video will be recorded or is being recorded, and it will be posted on the Michael's YouTube channel. And on YouTube, you always have the option of using the gear icon to slow things down or speed them up. So I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We've got our 2 loops on the hook here, and I can pull down on my end and feel that the end that's attached or the side that's attached to my yarn is in front of my fingers. So now I can grab that tail end again and pull that through both of those loops. And as I pull, I can feel this is the side right here that I'm pulling out, that I'm pulling on to make the loop big. So I just want to make sure to drop that on the front side of my fingers when I put my fingers in there to tighten my loop back up. So hopefully that showed it a little better.
I think so. And Tamara, could you just clarify, are we working across here or are we working up on the blanket?
We are working across. When you, I mean, honestly, when the finished blanket, you could turn it whichever direction you want to think about it. But generally speaking, we think of it as working from the bottom up. Or it could be the top down. Honestly, once it's finished, but we're working back and forth in rows. And I think the easiest way to think about it would be from the bottom up towards the top. So there we are. Okay, so we have gotten to that last little chain. And that one, like I say, can be particularly difficult to find. So it's okay to take your time and find the loop that you want to work under. And if you don't like working under these back humps, that's just my personal preference. You can work under a different section of that chain if you prefer. Especially if you're an experienced crocheter and you know your stitch anatomy, you can pick a front loop or a back loop. But I just find that I really like working to this back hump because when we are all done, we're going to have these 2 loops at the bottom, which is sort of a more finished look at the bottom of our blanket, since we're not going to be putting a border or an edging on this one. Although again, if you are an experienced crocheter and you wanted to do that, you absolutely could put a border on your blanket. So we've got our final chain here. And like I say, that one can be a little harder to find and it can definitely be a little tighter. So if you can pull on that a little to loosen up, you can. If not, get what you can in there and pull a loop through. Sometimes it really likes to tighten up on us. There we go. I'll just push that one through. Pull it on up to the height of our other loops here. And then we can finish that stitch. So like I say, for me, a 36-inch blanket was about 16 single crochets wide. We chained 17, but remember, we skipped that first chain because it's the little ladder or turning chain that lifts us up to the height of this row. So however wide you want to make your finished blanket, you'll want to make one more chain than that because that one's not going to be part of the width of your blanket. That's going to be part of the height of your blanket. So if I chained 17, I end up making 16 single crochets working back across. So after we've finished the first row, it's time to start the second row. So again, we need one of those little chains that's going to be the little ladder that gets us to the right height for this row. Now, normally this would just be a chain one for a row of single crochets using your crochet hook. And in this case, it's still going to be a chain one, but because of the unique nature of this one, I'm going to recommend that rather than using 3 fingers for your turning chain, you only use 2. I find when I used 3 for our turning chains, they got a little bit sloppier, and I just think the sides of this blanket stay a little neater if you only use a 2-finger width for the turning chain. So however many fingers you're using, one less basically for that. So then to make that one chain, it's just like the chains we made before. We grab that yarn and just pull it right on up and through. And now we can go back to three fingers, but I need to turn that loop around to get that one in front, like so. So now we've got that turning chain, which is going to be the little ladder that lifts us up to the right height for row 2. So with that made, I'm going to pull a little bit more yarn off my skein here. And then I'm going to flip our entire project over. So you can see I came right back down here. This is the end we began at. I'm going to flip the whole thing over, almost like I'm reading a book, just turning the page. Just turn it right over that way. So we lay it back out, nice and flat, and we're ready to begin our row 2. So we've still got that loop on our hook, or our, I keep saying our hook, on our hand from the last one. And now what we want to look for are the tops of these single crochet stitches, which is what we're going to be working into for row 2. So I'm going to turn this over a little bit so we can look at the top of row 1, the row we just made. Now, if I turn it this way again, you can see we've got those V's again, that little V shape. It's even a little easier to see here at the tops of these stitches. Each one of these V's, again, is the top of one stitch. So now we're going to be working under both of those loops to make the rest of these single crochets. And that's the same stitch we're going to make for the whole rest of this blanket. So let's come right back here to the beginning. This little V right here, that is, let me get that straightened out here. This one right here is our turning chain. So we don't want to work into our turning chain. We want to come over here and find the first single crochet. So if we stop and really look at our work, you can see this is the side of our blanket. That right there was our turning chain. And right here, there's that kind of big hole right there with 2 loops right above it. That's where we want to work into our first single crochet to make the first single crochet for row 2. And that's the name of the kind of stitch we're making here. So I'm going to get my fingers back in this loop here and pull it down to the right height. There we are. So I'm ready to go. Then I'm going to find that big hole. Like I say, it's really, if you pull it apart with this yarn, it's a little easier to see. There's a big space right there with just 2 loops right above it. So I want to go under both of those loops with my fingers. So now I've got the original loop around my hand and those 2 loops on top. I'm going right in the middle of that stitch. I can grab my yarn, pull it under those 2 loops, up to that height of 3 fingers again, and then I can grab it and pull it through both of those loops. And now we've made the first single crochet for row 2. You can see it sits right on top of the stitch underneath. So then we continue to work across, so we can lay out our work again and go over here, and you can see here's another one of those spaces with the 2 loops above it. So we know that's the second crochet we want to work into. So we just bring our loop right on over, put our fingers under those 2 loops, grab our yarn, pull it up under so that we have 2 loops on our hook, or on our hand rather. And then we can grab that yarn and pull it through those 2 loops. And just use your fingers, like I say, there's no right or wrong on how you're using your fingers here. It's whatever's comfortable for you to make those stitches. So I can lay that out again while I pull up some more yarn. And Lillian, were there any questions about this section right here so far?
Yeah, we do. We're all very keen to see the turning chain again.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Okay,
when you get there at the end of the row.
absolutely.
Apart from that, we all seem to be following along pretty well.
Good, good, good. Like I say, and I did do a full hour class on this before, since we're going to have to cut a little earlier today to do our second thread craft. If you want more of this, you can look at Michael's YouTube channel for another class I did on this one as well. So making my next stitch, I've gone right in there. I'll grab that one. Since I was chatting about some other stuff, we'll do the next one a little slower together here. Pull that loop up, get it comfy on my fingers. So we lay out our project, and hopefully you're starting to see, it kind of looks like a little dark cave right in there. Like it's just drawing you right in. And there's those 2 loops right above it of our yarn. So that's right in there. Grab our treasure and pull it out. Get our 2 loops on our hook or on our hand. I keep saying hook, it's such a habit. Grab our yarn and pull it through those 2 loops. There we are. And I always like to just sort of lay it out and sort of give it a little tug and straighten it out and say, yep, that's looking pretty good. So we'll continue on across here. Just move on down, find that next space ready and waiting for us. And I know it can be hard to spot those spaces. It's one of those things that does come with practice and time. I think sometimes hand crocheting like this can be really helpful. It'll help you see perhaps the anatomy of a stitch maybe and make it easier if you do decide to pick up an actual hook and do some crocheting as well. And if you are an experienced crocheter, I think hand crocheting is a great chance also to take a look at the anatomy of a stitch and really see where all these loops are going. So we've got just a few more left here before we get to our turning chain for row 3. So I find that next spot right there. You can kind of look and see we've got loops here. We've got these 2 loops here. They all sort of seem to point right to that spot. And that's where we want to put our hand. And just keep grabbing it, pulling up a loop, and then grabbing it and pulling through 2 loops. And then looks like we've got just, can be hard to see there. Let's see. We're going to say we have 2 more stitches here. Oop, sorry about that, everybody. I bumped the camera. Let me get that straightened out. There we are. So many cords and things. All right, so we're down here at the end. I'm going to go in there, grab that loop, and make our single crochet, right? Like so. Now it looks like this is actually our turning chain right down here at the end. So we can, if it's sticking out a little too much, you can crochet into it or you can leave it hang out there. Normally wouldn't crochet into it, but with these blankets, sometimes it gets a little crazy here at the end. So play it by ear. Go ahead and put a stitch in there if you want to. Whatever looks good to you. When you've worked all the way across for row 2, then it's time for row 3. And row 3 and all the rest of the blanket for whatever length of blanket you desire are all going to be the same. They're exactly like row 2, just like what we just did. So we've got our loop that we finished our previous row. It's time for that turning chain again. So what I want to do is I'm going to pull out one of my fingers and I'm going down to just 2 fingers and give that yarn a little tug so that that side loop is a little smaller. We talked about how that first one down there can be a little messy. This will help prevent that as we continue through our blanket. So with just a 2-finger size loop, I want to grab that yarn and just pull it right through that loop. And that's a chain 1. So I'll pull that right up through here. And then I'll make that one a 3-finger loop. And if we look, you can see, talk about the anatomy of the stitch a little bit. There's that Loch Ness monster, that Nessie hump that we made on the back of the chain we just made. But then we turn our work again. And you always want to try and turn your work the same way. So if you're left-handed, you might find yourself turning it the other direction. That's fine, just as long as you're consistent throughout the blanket. Again, consistency will help our blanket look just that much better. So to do that, I'm going to kind of slide it down here. And then we just grab our side. And like I say, we just turn it like we're turning the page of a book once more, like so. And then we can take some time and straighten it all out. So we've got an idea of what we're looking at here for our next row. Then remember, we don't work into that chain. We come down here and find that first single crochet right there. And we can see it's beneath those 2 loops right there on top. And there's a nice space right there for our fingers to go into. So we just need to make sure to remember to pull that yarn up from the back of our work, so the farthest side from us, so that when we pull it through that loop, then we can pull it up to that height. And then I'm gonna need to pull some more yarn off my ball of yarn here. Give me a moment. There we are. So now I can grab it and pull it through too. And then we just continue on across as we've been doing. And you just work back and forth in rows. Just take your time and lay your work out. Now, I think that when you are just learning, it's very easy. We all get interrupted, right? Kids, family, the doorbell, the phone. There's always an interruption. So we have to put our work down and come back to it. One thing I really want to recommend that you invest in are some stitch markers. I'm going to see if I have a big enough one over here. They come in different sizes, and this is a big yarn, so you would need a slightly bigger stitch marker. But this is what a crochet stitch marker looks like for those who haven't seen them before. They come in a few different styles, but this safety pin style is the typical one you want to use for crocheting because it opens. The knit ones are often, not always again, are often a solid circle. And if you use those with crochet, it's going to be permanently stuck on your project. You want to be able to open it and get it off later. But if you put your project down and you need to, like I say, put it down and come back to it later, I recommend you get one of these stitch markers, and you'll probably want something a little bigger with this yarn, but you can put that around your loop so you know what's your active loop. And then on a normal sized yarn, this would be big enough to keep it from pulling back in there. As you can see, this little guy isn't going to save anybody. But if we also loop the end of our yarn that's attached to our skein in there before we close it, then that will hold that loop nice and secure. And you'll know when you come back to your project, that's the loop you're working on. That's the loop that goes into your hand. And if it falls off the couch while you're running to answer the door, it's not going to be able to pull all your work out because it's sort of secured together there. And see, they're just tightened together so you can't actually have those stitches fall out on you. The other thing I wanted to point out, since we do have some beginners in here, is that if you do make a mistake and you don't like what you've made, all you need to do is give a tug on the end of the yarn that is attached to your skein, and all those stitches just go away, which can be a little sad when you've worked hard on those stitches, but that's part of crocheting. I think that's part of any craft you make with yarn, if you're crocheting or knitting. You're going to be undoing your stitches sometimes. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. And being able to just give a tug on that yarn and pull them out and still have yarn that you can still craft with and make those stitches the way you want them to look is such a great thing. So we're getting close to the time I need to switch over for the other craft, but I want to show that turning chain one more time. Since I've pulled out all those stitches, we would have to start row 3 over again, which is totally fine. We would pull that loop down, that last loop left on our hands after we finish the last stitch of the previous row, down to about a 2-finger sized loop. Then we can grab our yarn and just pull it right through that loop, just like we did when we were chaining at the very beginning. Get that on there the right way. Then we flip our work over like a page and find the top of that first single crochet we made, or rather the last one of the previous row, and go right back in there for our stitches. Now I saw a question pop up that I did want to address as well. How do you join a new skein of yarn? Because I did mention to make the 36 by 36 blanket, I had to use 4 balls. That means you're going to be switching sometimes. Let me pull up, actually, why don't I go ahead and cut this one? I'm going to pretend that this is, I just wanted a little strip thing. I didn't want a great big blanket today. I just wanted to make this little sample. And I'm all done. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. Might take a couple tries with this stuff. Like I say, it doesn't fall apart, but you'll get a little piece off right when you cut it, and that should be it. So to finish off your yarn, I'm going to pull out that chain right there. Because when we finish our last row, we don't want to make the turning chain. We just finish by making that very last stitch. So let's say it's either the end of our blanket or it's time to add a new skein. This was actually the end of our skein. To finish off the previous skein, the one you've been working with, the easiest way to do it is to pull that end up through that loop and just give it a tug. Might have to kind of pull it through with your fingers a little bit. This yarn is very thick, so it doesn't want to just glide like a, a smoother yarn would. It has a lot of texture. So you can give that a tug, and then that end is secured. Now, if it's the end of your project, you'll want to take that yarn and weave it in. So to weave in this yarn, normally when I talk about weaving in, we're using a yarn needle, which is basically a great big sewing needle with a great big eye so that yarn will fit in it. You can see this is a great big needle, but not nearly big enough for this yarn. So you're going to need to weave in your ends by hand. And literally you can just sort of tuck them in between your stitches back and forth in a few different directions until you've woven in. And with this yarn, I would say probably about a foot of yarn. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to weave it in for a little while and then take a bit of matching thread and a sewing needle, not a yarn needle, but an actual sewing needle, and you can sew that end down. And I think that's going to give you the best result. So when you need to continue your project with a new skein of yarn, say you stopped in the middle and you need to complete that row and add more height to your yarn, you can finish it off like that if you want to, and then just go right into the next stitch. Let me pull up my end here. We're going to pretend now this is a new skein of yarn, and I can go to the next stitch where I need to add my new skein. Just put my fingers in there. You see, I don't have any other yarn on my hand yet. I'm going to put my hand right into that stitch, grab our new skein of yarn. Want to make sure again to leave a nice tail end there so I can weave that in later or sew it down, and just pull up a loop. We want to make sure that we're mostly pulling not from that tail end, but from the end attached to our skein, and get that one in front of our hands. Now we've got a loop on our hand right there, okay? Now, I'm gonna make sure I grab the right end here. Let me get myself straightened out. There we go. So now I can do the chain again for the height and go right back into that same stitch for a single crochet. Then in the end, I would take the end, the cut end from the previous stitch, and basically use my fingers to sew them together. Alternatively, the thing I want to suggest, because that's the standard way to do it, but the thing I want to suggest instead that you do is when you go to add a new chain, or excuse me, a new skein of yarn, that I'm trying to find that other end. There we are. That you take your two ends, you've got the end of one skein, you're ready to add the other, and that you go ahead and overlap those and sew them together with the matching sewing thread. I think for this project, that's going to give you a better end result, and it's going to really secure those ends down for you a lot better, because you do want to be able to wash and dry this one. If you choose not to sew them down, just make sure that you weave them in really well and try and sort of tuck them in those stitches, and just know that when you wash it and dry it occasionally, you'll have to tuck those back in. So hopefully that covered that a little bit. Were there any other questions before I start switching over here, Lillian? I do want to talk to you a little bit about how to decide how much yarn you have, but I'll talk about that while I switch out our supplies.
Okay, that was what I was going to say. We love a bit of maths. Yeah.
All right, great.
There is one question here asking if you can tie it.
You could. It's going to put a knot in it. Some people hate knots, some people don't. So if you're comfortable with knots, I would recommend that you make sure it's a really secure knot. While there's lots of texture here, it still can come undone. So I would recommend that you go, I need a fair bit of yarn to do this knot here. We're going to basically, to make a standard knot, you might go like that and then tie another knot. For me, that's the sort of, double knot that we all do. It's a little bit more secure if you actually just go around twice each time. So let me do that from the beginning here. I've got my two ends. I will lay it over, go around twice. And then when I cross these over, just like a double knot before, I'll go around twice with this one. And that knot end is going to be significantly more secure than just a standard double knot. And you can sort of zhuzh it down and, and then heck, sew down those ends if you want to. But you are going to end up with a little bit of a lump there if you put a knot in it. Now with a big chunky thing like this, you might be able to hide that perfectly and never notice. And if that makes you happy, then you can absolutely go with that. So, all right, let's go ahead and come back to me for a minute. I gotta move this camera out of the way so I can pull up the new set of supplies for our new project. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to decide how much yarn you're going to need for your project, because you may want to make a totally different size blanket, and or you might want to make a chair pad or something like that. So what you want to do is go ahead and get a skein of this, and start playing with it and start working it up in the stitches that you want to use, whether they're single crochet. If you're a crocheter, you want to try double crocheting with your hands, or half double crocheting. Um, Go ahead and play with a skein of this, because like I said, everybody's hands are a different size. Your gauge, which is what we call how many stitches you get over a certain area, your gauge is going to be different than mine. We have different sized hands. That's one of the reasons crochet hooks actually come in different sizes, as a way to standardize that. So since this can't quite be as standardized, what you need to do is figure out, after you've worked up about a skein of this, what size area you made. So let's say, and I'm just going to throw out some numbers here that are not at all accurate to what this yarn makes, but they're easier for me to do in my head. Let's say you used a whole skein of that and you got a 10-inch by 10-inch square. You're going to get more than that, but for the sake of math, work with me here. Let's say it's a 10-inch by 10-inch square. Okay, 10 inches wide, 10 inches long. That means you've got 100 square inches of fabric from one skein of yarn. So now let's say what you wanted to make was 20 inches by 20 inches, again, for the sake of math. 20 times 20, 20 inches wide, 20 inches long, is 400. That's 400 square inches. If you know that you can get 100 square inches with one ball of yarn, then you know to get 400 square inches, you need 4 balls of yarn. Now, the math is not usually quite that pretty, but like I said, I needed to pull out numbers that I could do in my head. So that is genuinely my best recommendation, because if this is a new technique for you, you're going to want to practice it a little bit before you make your finished item anyway. So that would be a good chance to do that. And then you can get your personal gauge and make sure that you do get just the right size project for you. Alternatively, you can just chain as wide as you hope to make it and keep buying yarn as you go. But I think it's a little better to, like I say, get some practice with the technique, and then you can really see what's going to work for you, and how much yarn you're going to need to make the size of project you want to make.
Before we jump into the decorations, would you be able to show us the blanket one more time?
Absolutely. Let me pull it up here. Here is the finished blanket. And I did not sew in my ends. So you might see a couple little popping up because I just tucked them back in here for each of my classes. But before I would, move this out of the classroom, I would probably sew these down with my sewing thread. So here is what it looks like. And like I say, it takes a little practice. And when you're going super slow, I find that the stitches get a little more open. Once you sort of get used to it and you're making it at speed, if you will, not super fast, but just, at a comfortable pace, then that helps you maintain some of that tension, or, have sort of the same size stitches throughout as well.
I don't know about you, but I feel like this could be quite a nice, soothing Sunday project, because you're having this sort of very intimate, quiet crochet experience, where you're sort of at one with your crochet much closer.
Yes, absolutely. It is. It's very, it just feels good. You get to get your hands right in there with the yarn, but it's not, it's not mentally taxing. It is just a really relaxing sort of thing to do. It's the same stitch over and over again. And like I say, it's a really great way, I think, to get used to crochet a little bit. So I've got a lot of supplies here for our next project, but let me first show you what we're making. These are the Christmas string art gift tags, they're called, right here. And these are a couple of them that I made. I'll put up the pretty side. There we are. And this is just a really simple, fun craft. Like I say, totally different than the giant yarn we were just using. We're going to be using thread. But this is a really fun one that I think you could do with the kids. You could do for yourself. I was talking to someone this morning, and she's in the middle of moving, and she said she doesn't even have a tree up yet, but these look like something, you could decorate the house with, even if you're surrounded by boxes. So once I've got all these supplies, so many supplies, let me show you the supplies first so that we can move some of them off the table here. What you're going to need for this one are cardstock. You can see I've already made a couple with mine. So any old piece of cardstock. You could even use, some of the packaging you've probably gotten recently for some of your things mailed to your house. I know I'm getting lots of packages this time of year. And then you'll want some felt. This is just, the polyester felt. You don't have to use the all natural expensive kind. This is the craft felt in some holiday colors or whatever color theme you're using. And then you will need thread. This is Aunt Lydia's Classic 10. I recommend that 10, or if you wanted to move up to the 3, you could. Thread's a little different. The smaller the number, the thicker the thread. So You don't want to get down to like a 30 unless you want to make really delicate little things, but the 10 is a really good choice for this project. And as you can see, it comes in holiday colors. This is a sparkly one. I don't know if the sparkles will show up on camera, but you can have a lot of fun, pick whatever colors you want. Like I say, really definitely go with your own theme for these. So many supplies. And then you'll of course also need scissors and glue. And it doesn't specify what kind of glue. So I used Aleene's original tacky glue, which I think lots of crafters have laying around. It's a great all-purpose glue for all sorts of different materials. So you can put them all together. So the one thing that this project instructions did not call for was a glass, but I'm gonna recommend you grab a jelly jar, a glass from your kitchen, honestly, whatever you want. We need to make circles for this. And in the instructions, it tells you to draw a 2.5-inch circle. This project works no matter what size circle you need. So you can make great big ones. You know, the only limit really is the size of your supplies, the size of your felt sheet. So you can make great big ones. You can make teeny tiny ones. Just grab, you know, a jar or a glass from your kitchen. It's going to be a lot easier than breaking out the protractor for this project. And then you can make whatever size circles you want. Make all different size circles, whatever works for you. So let's go ahead and come back to the hand cam here. I'm going to move it in. There we are. So now I'm going to pull up. We want to start with our paper. And I always like to be really conservative with my paper and kind of get the maximum out of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my glass right on top of the paper there. Because like I say, I don't want to do my protractor. Is this exactly 2.5 inches like the instructions say? No, but it's darn close. And I'm simply going to trace my glass with a pencil. You could use a pencil. I think the instructions officially call for a marker, but whatever you have handy. Kind of hard to do with the camera stand there, getting all the way around, but we just want to make sure to get all the way around for our circle. So you can see right there, I've drawn my circle with pencil. So then I want to grab my paper scissors and I will go ahead and just cut that circle right on out here. So I'm just going to cut right around there. It doesn't have to be, you know, perfect. And I also want to say in the instructions, they recommend that, sorry, cutting on camera is a little trickier. They recommend that you use this circle then to make the sizes of your felt circles. And I did do that for the ones I made. Here, I'm going to cut that off, set that aside so it's a little easier here. But after making my first set, the ones I just held up for you guys, I didn't really love the way I could see the cardstock peeking out between the layers of felt. So I'm going to cut out a felt circle with you guys here, and I'm going to show you how I think I would do it, you know, sort of hindsight is 2020 here for set number 2. So I've got my circle cut out. And I also wanted to point out too, I was thinking about this when I was making these, is if you had a Cricut or one of those cutting machines that will cut felt and paper, this would be that would be a great way to make these in bulk too. Just go ahead and have your Cricut do all the cutting of circles for you. Then your circles will be perfect. But we're going to come back here to our felt, and you'll want to cut 2 felt circles for every ornament. So 1 paper circle and 2 felt circles for each ornament. And then when I cut them before, I just used this as a guide. I held them together and cut right around that paper circle to get my felt circles. And you can see here on the finished one, it looks pretty good. They're the same size, but you can just see that paper in between. So what I would recommend, like I say, in hindsight here on set number 2, pull up the fabric scissors. And then I just want to give a little extra space, not cut right up to the side of the paper, excuse me, but just leave a little bit of space, a little extra room right around that paper. So you just take your time and cut all the way around there. And I always get impatient and then just cut it off a little bit so I can set aside that big chunk of felt here out of the way. And if I hold it up again, you can see I just want to leave just that barest rim. And I think that will help hide that paper a little bit better here for our round 2 of ornaments. So I'm just going to trim that off a little more here, all the way around. And again, these are handmade, so my handmade cut circles are not perfect, but if you have a Cricut, I have a Cricut, so that's one I can speak to a lot better than I can to the Silhouette. But I would presume it's similar in that you've got all your shapes already pre-printed there in Design Access. You could very easily use that, do your cutting for you. So I've got one felt circle and one paper circle. So I would need to cut another one of the felt, but I'm going to pretend I've done that now for the sake of time. So I would take my two felt circles and my paper circle, and then I need to glue them together as a sandwich. So I recommend that you might want to put down a piece of paper or something to protect your table anytime you're using glue. And then hopefully my glue has not dried up from the other night. And I'm just going to put just a little bit. It doesn't take very much at all. This is all going to be held together by thread again in the end. So we just need enough to glue it together. So we just put that right on top of there. Oops, right on top of there. So they're nicely glued together. And then we would do the same thing on the other side so that it's a little sandwich with that paper in between. After that, you can set those aside to let them dry, or you can start right away with the thread. So I'm going to pull this one up here where I've already got my two felt pieces and my cardboard in there, and they're nice and dry. So it's a little bit stiffer once it's dry, which also makes this part a little bit easier. And then we get to bring on our thread. So you could use the green on the red, merely make it pop. You can mix it up a little bit, use the white with the sparkles, which I would love to do for this one, but I think with our white background here, I'll stick with the green so it's a little easier to see. So I'm going to start by pulling up some thread. And if you haven't worked with thread before, it typically comes in these, I don't even know what to call this shape. Lillian, does this have an official name for this sort of shape of a skein?
Oh my gosh, you've got me. Let
I
me
know it
check.
feels like it should have an official name, but I don't know that it does. It's got a cardboard core in there that the string, essentially the thread, is wound around. So you want to find the end that's on the outside. Again, kind of like our Bernat blanket, don't try and find the end that's on the inside. That's firmly inside. With thread, you always go from the outside. I'm going to take a moment I forgot to put the cap back on my glue. Got to get that back on there. There we go. So now we take our end. And you want to, again, leave a nice long end. That's kind of the rule of working with string or thread or yarn. Always leave a nice end for yourself. You can always trim it off, but you can't add it on. So we have our nice long string there. I'm just going to lay it right over our ornament and secure that here in your hands, however is comfortable for you. And then I'm going to start winding this thread right around. And we want to kind of go straight up and down like so. Let's make sure that's in focus there. And then cross it and offset it by, it says about 1/8 of an inch. So you can just eyeball it. Don't pull out the ruler or anything. Maybe it'll sometimes be 1/4 of an inch. Sometimes it'll maybe be a little less than 1/8. Totally fine. But you just want to take your time going around and around this ornament. And as you do, you can see that's going to hold the whole thing together. And it's also, if you've left a little extra felt there, going to help seal those edges and hide that cardboard a little bit. I pre-cut all of these before I realized they were going to peek as much as they do. But we just want to take our time going around and around the ornament. Pull up some more thread here. Might be helpful to actually go ahead and pull up quite a bit of the thread before you begin. But we just keep working our way around. And if you think, gosh, I think I'd like them spaced out a little bit more. Again, the 1/8 of an inch thing is just what's shown in the pictures. It is not a hard and fast rule. You can make these any size. You could add just a little bit of string or thread to them. You could add a lot. You can use the sparkly stuff. You can have a lot of fun making these your own. So you can see it is pretty darn quick and simple. I think this is a great craft to do with your kids this year, or like I say, if you're having a handmade holiday. These are recommended as art gift tags, but of course they make great ornaments. And I've got some not crochet hooks, but ornament hooks here. We can try them out with in a moment. So you can see I'm working my way all the way around. We get a really lovely just overlay there. Pretty festive. And then I've still got the one end here I'm just sort of holding on to. It's pretty well on there now. But I just want to sort of fill in that last gap maybe there. And then we'll take a look at what that looks like on this side here. And if you need to, you can adjust those strings a little bit. If you feel like on this side they're a little off, unwind it, redo the ones you don't like, whatever whatever you need to do until you're happy with the way that looks. Then we're just going to put that down for a minute. Pick up our scissors. Oop, those are the fabric scissors. Let me grab the regular scissors. Here we are. And cut our thread, again, leaving a nice little tail there. And then we can just take our two ends and tie them together. And this can be just a regular knot, whatever you like. And you can then use the rest of these ends. And you see, I'm just going to tie it right there in the middle. There's right where the knot's ending up. You can use these ends to tie this to a garland or attach it to a gift. It makes a beautiful gift topper. Whatever you like to do. Just get that on there nice and tight. And then, like I say, you can use these ends to sew it onto something, or you can just trim them off, whatever you like to do. So I brought over a couple of ornament hooks right here from my own collection that I have in a drawer for when I've made a crocheted ornament. And of course, they're tangled together because it's not Christmas if the things aren't tangled together, right? There we go. And then I think you could just hang that, just hook that right over some of those back strings, of course. There we go, like so. And then I think that would look really lovely, just like that on the tree. I've got another ornament hanger here. Just slide that right under those strings on the back and you're all set. So you could even use that to attach to your gift. But this is just a really fun and really festive quick craft that you can make with just some felt and paper, and probably, honestly, school glue would work just as well as tacky glue. You don't have to use a fancy craft glue. But it is another fun project that you can make, and a little different than that great big thick yarn we were using before, for sure. So did anybody have any questions on these little guys? They are pretty simple.
I'll just give everyone a moment, but there's no questions so far. They're very cute.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think so too. I think they're a lot of fun. These were designed by Patty Wilkinson for Yarn Inspirations or Red Heart. And yeah, it's just a really great, fun, easy craft. Like I say, I used just a, little juice glass, but you can use whatever size, whatever you want to trace to make them the size that you want them to be.
Absolutely. And Maddie says they're a great project to do with kids.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So if we want to come back to the main camera here, that would be great. Thanks. Just like I said, I hate to move that thing. I'm always afraid I'm going to make people seasick if I move it while people are looking through it. So, but yeah, so that was how to make these cute little guys. And of course, one more look here since we're winding down at that great big blanket. And that yarn, again, for those who want to give that a try, is Bernat Blanket Big, which is available at your local Michael's. Or at least online at Michael's if your local one sold out. So I think that's it for me. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you have a wonderful holiday season. I know this is the last Michael's class for me this year, but I'll be back in 2021, and there are a ton of other amazing classes coming yet this year. So Lillian, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining us. For today's live community classroom with Michaels. We would love to see your whips, so share your work with hashtag #MakeItWithMichaels and hashtag Yarnspirations. And just a reminder that you can find more classes on michaels.com and the recording of today's class at michaels.com/classes. Can't wait to see all your beautiful Christmas decorations and giant cuddly blankets.
Indeed. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tamara. Bye, everyone.